5. We'll open with a Karakia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, councillors. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, ki makinakina ki uta, ki mataratara ki tai, he aka ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he ho hu, tihe, mauri ora.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. All right, councillors, we've got a few items on the agenda today, and we are opening with a deputation. Just seeing as we have externals in the room, do you want to just run through health and safety?
Kia tato. Just a short reminder that in the event of an emergency, please follow the directions of staff. The nearest exit in the event of a fire is through the main chamber doors in which you came in, turn to the right onto the footpath, and the assembly point is across the road via the crossing, being mindful of the traffic. If you need any assistance, please just let a member of staff know and we'll be happy to help.
All right. So we'll start with our deputation. This is on page 6 of your agendas, Councillor, and we have Trevor Simpson representing the Plug Group. Welcome, Trevor. And just so we'll start with clear instructions. Happy to give you 10 minutes to speak to this deputation today, and if you want to, within that time, allow time for questions from councillors, we can do that as well. Thank you. Just need to get a red light on there. There we go. Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm representing the members of the Primary Land Users Group. It's PLUG, as we call ourselves. This group was born out of the Plan Change 1 implementation. We represent sheep farmers, beef farmers, dairy farmers, horticultural, market gardeners, forestry, and the extraction industries, which is the quarry industries. We needed a voice in PC1, and now it transpires we need a voice on other pressing issues. Over the last 5 years, we have endeavoured to understand how council operates, especially in the flood protection, land drainage, and consent issues with water takes. Enormous costs are involved in this area, yet at the same time, the region benefits many times over by having all this infrastructure and water takes in place. We are very conscious that some costs are necessary, but also that ratepayers are being told to pay millions of dollars of unnecessary costs because council is taking a far too conservative approach to the present regulations. We have highlighted 2 areas of concern in our printed agenda today. The 2 topics are permitted activity status for existing flood protection and drainage assets in their entirety. By that, what I mean is if something has been replaced like for like, the whole concept is under permitted activity, not just bits and pieces. And the renewal of consents for water takes for all utilities in the region. This is power stations, towns, cities, everything where the ratepayer benefits. We wish to try and curb the growing levels of red tape and costs, financial means, time, mental stress that comes with the process of renewing consented water takes for utilities. I'm not talking about private enterprise. We are recommending that where there have been no significant changes to the local environment and where the consent holder has a good record of compliance with the consent conditions, then they be able to renew the consent without having to go through a public notification process with its associated costs. I'll give you a small example. The Tikawata Irrigation Society, a non-profit organisation that supplies water to the District Council for Tikawata Township and surrounding areas. They are in the process right now of renewing their consent, 25 years, I presume. $200,000 in climbing, the cost to renew that consent. They haven't got it yet. So we're probably going to be heading for 300,000. Now that is just to carry on doing something that they're doing now. Not one nut or bolt is changing. And who's paying that? Ratepayer. So we have to have a way, and I believe we have a way. Now and in the future, this council needs to do everything in its power to make rates more affordable for ratepayers. Presently, this does not happen. Council needs to agree on a small number of non-negotiable objectives per triennium, and I'm talking about this room here, and instruct the Chief Executive to achieve these objectives. What we have presented today could be two of those objectives. The chairperson has publicly stated that red tape must be reduced. Last September, Council were presented with a paper from staff indicating some intent for permitted activity for the above points, along with Council being conservative with the interpretation of the rules and regulations. We have a letter dated March this year from Chris Bishop, Minister of RMA Reform, stating councils can decide if upgrades of flood protection can be permitted activity if measures meet certain criteria. So we believe the rules are there, but this council is being far too conservative in their approach to these rules. We believe if this council has a common goal, council can transform their operational arm and consent procedures, be united for ratepayers' benefit, and perform your necessary duties within the interpretation of the rules. Now, this does not happen at present because the process is not driven by this council. The process has been driven by outside influences and not by the elected members. This elected council needs to set some major objectives and make them happen. We believe our suggestions are a good start. Thank you very much.
Any questions from Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for that presentation. Is it as simple as asking the Chief Executive or directing the Chief Executive to plug, no pun intended, and go direct his staff to be more permissive?
I don't know the process. You people employ the Chief Executive. You don't employ the staff.
Right.
So I presume poor old Chris cops it. So I don't, if you're allowed to go straight to staff, by all means. I don't know the process.
We'd go through the Chief Executive, obviously. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, Trevor, you've talked about two things. One, renewable all existing consented water takes, and then you also talk about particularly utility water takes. So do you have a preference on that?
I'm talking about utilities, which is public assets.
Right.
I'm not talking about, sorry about the confusion, I'm not talking about any private enterprise or whatever. I'm talking about Hamilton City Council taking water for, town supply. I'm talking about Cambridge. I'm talking about Karakia Dam when their consent comes up in 20 years' time. Why do we have to go through a notified process? Why can't we just, if there's new conditions, fine. But why, once you open that door, there's a whole industry out there that feed off this process. And there's only one person paying for it, and it's the ratepayer. And so what I'm saying is if this council could work towards saying that it can go, it can roll through a non-notified process, still go through a process. Nobody wants to break any laws. Go through a process. We have the case that's all pretty well thought out, public, Mackenzie Country, Meridian Energy last year, 100 million or so gone to stakeholders so they can carry on producing power. I think everybody's been aware of that, Now that's only comes out of our pockets, and it's not necessary. And some could say, well, business could say, no, we're not going to pay that, but they chose to pay that because it was probably cheaper than going through the process. And so it's the process that needs to be more friendly to the ratepayer. And you people, I'm sure, can drive that. How you drive it, I don't know. You have to be united for a start to say, we wish to bring this, make this business more affordable to our ratepayers. That's the first thing you have to say. Then you make a decision. We would like to go down there if we can. And you start. If you have to alter a long-term plan, you have to do something. Well, get on and let's do it.
I know you say that there was a council report on this issue previously.
Yes.
Perhaps
From the driven from the flood protection committees, we were questioning or asking what the process is for permitted activity. And Greg commissioned the staff to send a report, and it was presented here presented to ICM, I'm not sure about here, last September. And it was a very good one, and it gave us hope that under the present rules and regulations, if council were to maybe take a less conservative approach to regulation, a lot of this stuff could be permitted activity. Parts of it are, but we're saying if it's like for like, if a new pump shed has to be, for $13 million, if a new pump shed has to be built 20 metres away, because this one's still got a pump, it's the concept of permitted activity. And we believe the report that came back was there was genuine intent in the system to accommodate that.
Okay. Well, we might follow up with
Sorry.
Bruce for a.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
Yeah. Would that be a fair comment, Greg?
so I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the deputation today is in relation to public utility water takes?
Only.
So just municipal type water takes? And the ask is that be considered a permitted activity?
No, we at the moment when the consents come up, they go through a notified process.
Right, okay.
And what we're saying is that if they've been behaving themselves, doing everything right, for like Karakia Dam, been there, 80 years or something, it'd be 100 years time it comes up for renewal. If everything's gone right, why should they have to go through a complete notified process because that's when the costs balloon out. We're saying that it goes through a more simpler process.
Understand.
People still have their say, but
Understand.
it just cuts all that cost out.
All right, there are two more questions, so I'll take those and then we'll close it. I've got Councillor Nebo and then Councillor.
It was just a quick one. I absolutely get where you're coming from, Trevor, but just looking at the letter that Andy sent out, I mean, that's a significant change to the existing regional plan rules, which means a plan change, which is exactly the same process we've been grinding through the courts with PC1. And under current legislation that we're bound to abide by, we'd have to repeat that same process again. And I guess the point I'm making is I think we need some better comms between your group and this council to understand the ramifications of what you're asking for sometimes, because we just can't do it as quickly and easily as what I think I'm hearing you suggest that we can. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it has to be a combined effort from this council to say, we want to go down this track on behalf of ratepayers. That's all we're saying. And once you start the motion, usually, you get underway. And if it takes a couple of $1 million to change something, well, we're still saving a hell of a lot of where we're going. Well, unless we make a combined start, and I think, the present thing is, it can't. We're saying we can, because it's not I'll be long gone. This is going on forever, and we have to make this, because these things are rolling around day after day, and the cost is we've got to keep the cost to a minimum. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, Mr. Dean.
Councillor Hughes, and then I will speak Councillor Gibson.
Thanks,
Councillor
Madam
Hughes.
Chair. Really just a point of clarification, Trevor. I totally support where you're coming from on this, and if I'm back next term, then we're doing what we can to help. Just in relation to the Waitaki scheme, which is the one you're referring to, you were saying this is the burden's carried by ratepayers. In that case, burden is being carried by the users, electricity users of New Zealand. There was $180 million consenting fee passed already and across to various parties on that, which is just extortion, as far as I'm concerned. And New Zealand Inc. is paying for that, the consumers are paying for that, and it's one of the reasons that businesses are being closed around the country because they can't afford the price of electricity anymore. So I totally support what you're saying. Thank you.
Councillor Cookson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, mine was exactly the same. I 100% support you, but it's not just ratepayers are the fear. It's cost of living. It's people that pay power bills and everything, and that doesn't mean no ratepayers. So I think that with the wording that it's actually the cost of living of all Waikato residents are affected by this. So thank you, Trevor, for coming in today, and I fully support what you've said. Thank you.
Well, I just think we need change. Same old, it's not working. And you people around this table have the ability to start the change. That's what we're trying to say. But thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today, Trevor. Really appreciate you coming in and speaking to this and responding to the questions. I suppose that I just want to pick up on what Councillor Kneebone was saying around communications between the groups. I think that this certainly is something that council could consider, and I think if for us to do that, it's about asking for either a report or some sort of discussion around if this was to be enacted, what would be the policy implications on that? Because we have to consider all of those things, right? But I certainly appreciate you raising the issue for us. Thank
Okay.
you very much, Trevor.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Sorry,
A
microphone.
question. If a council, this or the next, was to pass a resolution and direct you to work in this direction, how quick? And I know RFA and all that, subject to change. If that was a resolution that was passed.
I can't answer that on the spot. I mean, obviously I've got KPIs that you could set a KPI for me. And there's options under it. There's options on trying to get government to do something that we can't do. You know, they can do it at a stroke of a pen, whereas, you know, we've got to go through quite long processes. We need to look at the options.
Yeah, obviously, Trevor's alluded to, instead of can'ts, how we could look at the cans. That's probably just comes in cans, not cannot.
Yeah, and of course, there'll be a wide view of public who might want to have input on the whole conversation. Which goes back to the whole circular argument about where the issue is in the first place.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So what I'm hearing is it is a conversation that a council could have around what does the process look like? What are the implications? Who would need to be engaged in that process? That sort of
The
thing.
council needs to resolve that it wants to do that, and those are the issues that need to spill out of it. But first and foremost, the council needs to decide whether it wants to go in that direction.
All right. Thanks, Trevor. Much appreciated. All right. So apologies. We do have an apology from Councillor Graff. Any other apologies? I've got a mover and Councillor Downard, second and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Confirmation of the, sorry?
Sorry, Pam.
Yes,
if I can
Councillor
just say, I think it's premature to be doing anything. I totally support Councillor Smith saying we've got new legislation coming, and I don't think we should be moving on anything until that legislation is in place. That'll give us better direction.
I do, I suppose from my perspective, I do think that it would be reasonable for this council to ask staff to prepare information for a future council if they wanted to put something in motion or understand the implications of that. Yeah, so that could be something that this council could do. I leave that to council. All right, confirmation of the agenda. Got a mover and Councillor Strange. Second and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, disclosures of interest. Any new disclosures of interest from councillors? Nope. All right, we'll go to minutes for confirmation. All right, I'm going to let you talk us through this.
Morning, everyone. We will follow the same process as the previous meeting for confirming and or receiving the minutes we have on the table. I'll run through them one at a time and let you know what it is we are receiving and if there are any resulting actions for council to consider. So first of all, starting with the previous meeting of council on the 24th of June, this is simply confirming that those minutes as in page 11 of your agenda are correct.
I have a mover. Councillor Knaybon, sorry. Do I have a second? Councillor Nicol? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Hodge? All those in favor? Opposed?
Just point of
Sorry?
clarification, we're
Yes.
doing them as a chunk.
No, one at a
No,
time.
we're doing one at
Just
a, one at
Yeah,
a
okay,
time.
because I was going to say, sometimes I've done them as a chunk and probably wasn't at every single one, so.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. June, July.
That will be rubber fingers. They,
Good spotting, though. Eagle eyes.
no, you're quite correct. The minutes that we are confirming are the 23rd of July.
All right, so I've got a mover and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, so now 6.1.
Okay, item 6.1, these are the Rokawa Charitable Trust and Waikato Regional Council co-governance minutes from the 13th of May. We've previously covered these minutes at a workshop and they are now presented for receipt only. We will note the decisions made under delegated authority. There were two recommendations for council, which are resolutions number 25-05 and 25-07. We will note those resolutions and any items for council to consider will be tabled by way of report at future meetings. So just to clarify, we are only receiving these minutes and we are not making any further decisions on or contained in those minutes.
Got a Councillor Nicol.
Oh, no, I just wanted to comment, that's all. I just think the process that democracy has developed here is much clearer and more transparent and much easier to follow. So I just wanted to commend that.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy to second.
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.2.
6.2, these are the Waikato Raupatu River Trust and Regional Council Co-Governance Committee minutes. We are here receiving both the open and public excluded minutes, noting that these minutes have already been made publicly available by way of the previous workshop and this agenda. And we are noting any decisions made under delegated authority. There's no recommendations on the table for council to consider.
I just wanted to comment
Councillor
again.
Dunbar Smith.
Item 7.5 on page 45, pre-meeting discussion summary. So at 1 hour, 7 minutes into the meeting, there was a pre-meeting discussion summary, and I just find that an unusual process that you've got pre-meeting discussions happening, which should really be workshops, then entering a meeting and being made as effectively, well, they're not recommendations, they're
I can provide a brief comment on this as I wasn't part of this meeting as such. Prior to the meeting, the members gathered, and as tends to happen for a lot of committees, the members were having, the pre-meeting chat that they'll have about what's on the agenda for the day. During those discussions, they did identify a few key points that obviously, as Councillor Dunbar-Smith has pointed out, those discussions are immaterial. During the meeting, for clarity's sake, they introduced those items so that they would appear in the minutes and that readers would be aware of what was discussed prior. There are no resolutions or actions to consider resulting from that. They're included solely for your information.
Councillor Nicol, do I have a second? Councillor Clarkson, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.3. This is on page 91.
Same again, these are the receipt of the minutes, both open and public excluded, which have been released into open previously, of the Te Arawa River Iwi Trust and Waikato Regional Council Co-Governance Committee meeting held on the 6th of June. We are noting the decisions made under delegated authority. They did make a recommendation to council, which is Resolution 25-07. We are only noting that, and any further action again would come to council by way of report or future correspondence.
So could you
Councillor
clarify,
Kneebone, would you like to, sorry.
I just wanted, could you clarify what you mean by that, Dave? It's there as a recommendation. So if we endorse these minutes, are we endorsing that recommendation?
No,
Noted.
no, you're only receiving the minutes, and essentially the recommendation. I'm just checking it on to see which recommendation. Okay, just looking, that was the recommendation where the committee resolved that the integrity of the JMA be maintained and its model promoted as an example of effective co-governance, etc., etc. The reason that recommendation isn't tabled here because by legislation and or being a signatory to the JMA, we have already agreed to that.
Councillor Kneebone, would you like to move those? Councillor Clarkson, would you like to second?
Just before
Oh,
then,
sorry.
though, can you explain what the process will be about changing the location of the meeting in the minutes?
Oh, that's correct. One thing to note, while you were receiving these minutes, the location in the minutes of where the meeting was held is noted as our chambers. They were held in Rotorua. These minutes, while we are only receiving them, they have been tabled for the next meeting of Tarot, which I think is next week. And
That's
at
right.
that meeting, when they confirm the minutes is correct, that location will be amended in that process.
Yeah.
I've got a mover and Councillor Kneebone, second and Councillor Clarkson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.4.
6.4, these are the minutes of the Waiora Co-Governance Committee held on the 21st of July 2025. This is page 130 in your agendas. This resolution seeks for you to receive those minutes only and that you will note the decisions made under delegated authority. There were no recommendations to council. However, it is worth noting that at that meeting, they did discuss the tours and that recommendation was tabled at the previous meeting of this council last month and resolved then. So these minutes now contain no recommendations as they've been addressed.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Downard and Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.5.
6.5, these are the minutes of the Integrated Catchment Management Committee, the meeting held on the 5th of August 2025, page 139 of your agenda. And today we are seeking to confirm those minutes as a correct record and to note decisions under delegated authority. There are no recommendations for council to consider in those minutes.
Got a mover in Councillor Clarkson and a second in Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.6, Environmental Performance Committee, 7th of August 2025. We are seeking to confirm both the open and public excluded minutes of this committee as a correct record. This appears in your agenda at page 146 and in the public excluded agenda on page 18.
I have a mover. I've got Councillor Clarkson, second. Oh, sorry. Do you have a question? Oh, second from Councillor Cookson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.
I could comment on this one.
So last ones, councillors, this is the minutes from the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee meeting held on the 15th of August 2025. Today we are seeking to firstly receive those minutes. Secondly, note the decisions made under delegated authority. And thirdly, note that there is a recommendation for council to consider in these minutes. It has been tabled at this meeting in general items as item 7.3. So this resolution will not enact that recommendation. That will be covered later in the meeting.
Happy to move. So I've got a mover in Councillor Nicol
just
and
a question.
and I will come to that, and a second in Councillor Strange. Go ahead, ask your question, Councillor Dunbar.
It's item 7.8 of that agenda, page 163. This is the proposed arrangements for the next triennium. Yeah, so this is also a staff recommendation that comes forward that doesn't seem to have been.
Okay. Just to briefly cover this, and I may not be totally in the picture here, the Future Proof Public Transport Committee has been formed by Future Proof. It is not a committee of council. However, council, by way of delegation, provides that subcommittee with its powers to look at the public transport policy that we work on. So the next triennium, there will be 2 parts to this. And without stepping on the toes of the incoming council, we're seeking for the Public Transport Subcommittee to be formed under RTC, which will make it a subcommittee of council. This recommendation is requesting that Future Proof consider that as this is its subcommittee, and if it agrees, provides the opportunity for Future Proof to disestablish that committee as it holds the power to do so. It doesn't, however, affect the delegations that council has given it. Obviously, if the committee is disbanded, those delegations return to council, and in the next triennium, any new committees formed will be at the will of council, including those delegations.
Oh, so I went and read up what the actual minute says because it seemed important and it seems very logical. It's proposed, what they're actually proposing is that the subcommittee be split into a strategic growth matters go to the Future Proof and all regional public transport matters go to the Transport Committee. So that's a logical thing. That's not actually contained in the staff recommendation item 3. It just talks about being led through a partnership respecting independence. So doesn't seem to follow what's actually happening.
No, there's more work to be done in this scope. There's some more staff work behind the scenes to get that to Future Proof and the partners, of which obviously Regional Council is one to consider.
And the question also is, will Future Proof be meeting prior to the end of the triennium?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so they will presumably make.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they have the option then whether or not to discharge that subcommittee.
Okay. Good.
Councillor Smith?
Just on that issue, if I, some time ago, I was on the Regional Public Transport Committee when it was independent of RTC. The problem with that committee was that it was dominated by Hamilton issues because 80% of the buses in the region are Hamilton centric, and therefore regional non-Hamilton members became very disenfranchised and bored to tears completely and utterly. And so therefore public transport in the regions got lost. Just concerned that, and when it went to RTC, some of us moved to disestablish it because of the Hamilton Centre. When it went to RTC, clearly it got put on the back burner at the end of the meetings normally, and no one wanted to rush out the door because they'd taken up too much time with normal RTC matters apart from regional transport. So, you need to consider strongly you don't lose that public transport oversight and get it swallowed up in a bunch of other things. So, really do. I wouldn't say that. I was going to say we should bury public transport, but we can't. So anyway, we need to be careful what we do and how we structure public transport. Thank you.
Totally agree. Councillor Strange? Councillor Strange?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I fully take your points on board, Councillor Smith. Yeah, the recommendation from the committee reflects those concerns. Also, for us moving to a regional rating model, we need to retain that local voice. So RTC is the best place to do that. The plan with moving forward is that RTC would be in the morning and we'd go from region wide, and as we get towards the end of the day, it would head towards more Hamilton centric focus. So anyone else not involved can peel away. We respect their time, we respect their travel, consolidating it all onto one day, efficiencies for everyone concerned and costs. So that is the recommendation moving forward.
Okay, thank you for providing that clarity. All right, so I've got a mover and a seconder. Do I, all those in favor? Great. Okay. Now, councillors, we will move on to item 7.1. This is on page 165 of your agendas, and we welcome Vaughn Payne to the table for an update on Waikato Water Done Well. Welcome, Vaughn.
Tēnā koe, e te tia mana Pamela, o te rā koutou katoa ngā kai kaunihira, me ngā kaimahi o te kaunihira nei. Just thank you, Madam Chair. Greetings to councillors and to staff also. Yeah, so really want to thank you for the opportunity to update you on Waikato, what is now Waikato Waters, now that we have legally incorporated the company, and really want to also acknowledge the support of Waikato Regional Council in the journey that we've had, acknowledging that it's been for the country a long journey, but this council was one of the few regional councils that stepped up to acknowledge that there was a regional interest in sorting out a solution for the Waikato and not something that we saw elsewhere in the country. Dave, are you happy to move the slides? Thank you. So some of these slides you've seen previously. So our vision is healthy water, healthy people, te mana o te wai, te mana o te tangata. And our strategic priorities on the next slide. Thanks, Dave. Oh, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. So with that vision, it is very much about looking at the needs of our water bodies and looking at the multiple plants that we have and networks that we have within a catchment, and understanding what is the best return on investment for our water bodies, as opposed to being driven by a plant by plant, a consent by consent approach to thinking about that investment. And so by having multiple plants, schemes, networks under the control of one organisation within a catchment, we can start to give effect to that vision of te mana o te wai, te mana o te tangata. Thank you. and our 5 strategic priorities, which you've seen previously. In terms of financial sustainability, obviously scale is important in that regard. The scale of Waikato Waters is about $1.6 billion of assets and current revenue once we have the 6 councils in the tent of about $155 million per year. Workforce currently around 250 amongst the 6 councils. Being customer focused, local influence has been addressed through largely the design of the company, having a shareholder forum that sets the expectations of the company and holds the company to account through that statement of expectations. And obviously another strategic outcome is delivering on expectations, of which there are many, relating to improve water management, and there wouldn't be a treaty settlement in our region that doesn't articulate expectations around improved water management. So those strategic outcomes we set very early on in the journey, and those continue to be the focus, long-term focus of the organisation once it's established. Thank you, Dave. Our shareholders, so 7 of our 10 Waikato territorial authorities, Hauraki, Matamata Piako, Otorohanga, South Waikato, Taupo, Waipa and Waitomo. And I'll talk through shortly around what that might look like in terms of timing of their water businesses moving into Waikato Waters, and our iwi partners, Pari Hauraki, Ngāti Maniapoto, Ngāti Tūwharetoa, Raukawa, Te Arawa and Waikato Tainui, and want to acknowledge the leadership of Councillors Hodge and Mahuta in as recently as supporting the establishment board being appointed. So ngā mihi ki a koe, Kataraina. Thank you, Dave. So yesterday we announced the establishment board members. They will be joined by 2 additional members by July next year. So Alina Trout being the chair, an experienced governor, an engineering background, and also holds a number of board roles. You'll know Jadine Kana as an ex-employee of Waikato Regional Council, but also holds a number of roles with our territorial authorities, particularly in the risk and assurance space. And John Lamont, ex-chief executive of Watercare, the Entity A chief executive, and has the useful skills of being an ex-Air Force pilot. Thank you, Dave. So transfer dates. So we have 6 transfer dates for 6 of our shareholders. So in the current financial year, South Waikato, Waitomo and Waipa move their water businesses into Waikato Waters by July 2026. By October 26, Matamata Piako, and then Otorohanga and Hauraki by July 27. And Taupo, while they are a shareholder, they haven't agreed to a transfer date, but have agreed to receive shared services. Thank you, Dave. And just a reminder, I suppose, of the why. What were the challenges that our councils were facing or are facing in water services? So the most common challenge relates to affordability, competition for workforce, and delivering on capital works, of which capital works relating to resource consent compliance is a factor in that. And then closely followed by compliance and consenting challenges as well. And so felt that they could best deal with those challenges together as opposed to individually. Thank you, Dave, which is probably a good segue into summarising particularly the critical success factors, but to note that this is the largest grouping of councils in the country who have decided to form a water CCO. And in terms of the success factors, and this is perhaps subjective, but I think there are some lessons here for other likely system changes that might be needed in future. So it is all about leadership and it is all about relationships. If the shareholders or the councils seeking to work together don't get on, they don't see themselves in each other, it's an uphill battle. So leadership and relationships at all levels, at a political level, at an executive level, and throughout the organisations has been really important. When things got tough, often people reverted to saying this is about the long term. This isn't about the next 3 years or the next 10 years. We're trying to find a solution for the next 50 years. And so getting an early agreement on a common vision and strategic priorities was also important in the journey. Also ensuring that we were always conscious of who our bosses were on this journey, and in particular elected members. So ensuring that we maintain that the confidence, not just of the mayors and the chief executives, but the wider elected membership, and that including getting an independent review of the model by, got a mind blank, but I'll come back to his name shortly. Brad Olsen undertook an independent review of the economics of the model. And that was presented back to all elected members at a combined hui. Being principle-based, ensuring that we were aligned, moving as quickly as the slowest council, those sorts of important principles. Importantly, the elected members giving the chief executives a mandate to co-design the model and take that model back to elected members for approval. Having a heads of agreement that was non-binding, that provided a basis for each council to consult their communities on comparing Waikato waters to other options that they consulted on. Being pragmatic, not sweating the small stuff, and probably really important to maintain momentum. It is really easy to think about slowing things down, but we always had some firm deadlines that we were working to maintain momentum. So. And again, just want to finish off by acknowledging this council's support and leadership right from the beginning. When we came together in mid-2023 and asked ourselves the question, do we want to continue to react to proposals out of Wellington, or did we want to come up with a Waikato solution to our water services challenges? So, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa.
Thank you, Vaughan. Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for your presentation, Vaughan, and well done getting it across the line. Just one question I've got. You said one of the biggest challenges was competition for workforce. I understood one of the reasons for this was it's a consolidation of entities, which means the workforce is going to shrink rather than get bigger and get more competitive. Can you just explain what's happening in practice out there?
Yeah, so I can't remember the figures, but with it, like a lot of sectors, there's an ageing workforce, and so there is a need for that future pipeline as one of the key workforce challenges that we have. And because of that shrinking workforce, and because everybody wants, you've got various entities being stood up around the country, is a lot of councils are struggling under the status quo to attract the right staff. And so they could see that there was going to become an increasing challenge. And rather than competing for staff amongst the 6 or 7 councils, they felt if they had one organisation, then you're not seeing the staff jumping from one council to another, but they're part of one organisation. And I know that there is another water entity, EOY, also being stood up, and a small council would not only face competition from their neighbours, but from that larger water entity being established as well, because a larger organisation is quite attractive to staff in terms of career pathways.
Thanks. It's really the higher school level staff that where the issue is, not finding the right number of people.
Yes, although I do think that even at an operational level, there's the ageing workforce issue exists everywhere. Yeah.
Better shut up.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So the establishment board's just been stood up. Will they go ahead and appoint a CEO?
That's under our current plan, yes. So we have an establishment plan that's made up of different work streams, and so in that plan there is the idea of a CE being recruited pretty quickly. The board haven't yet met, and they may have their own ideas, but that's under the current plan. That's the idea.
Good. In terms of PC1 implementation, this is going to affect all of these councils in a way, and they're all pretty much locked into Te Whaimana. Do you have any thoughts on how that will impact on the rollout of the services?
I suppose, and I haven't kept up with PC1, but
we can give you a brief.
but my belief is that the approach that we're trying to take in terms of strategic investments to give effect to Te Whaimana, looking at the needs of the river versus a plant by plant thinking, would align with my recollection of where we got to with PC1.
Right.
So prioritisation approach is whether we're talking about land use or point source discharges, I would see strong alignment.
And thirdly, we're obviously in election season at the moment, and ratepayers are agitated about costs. There seems to be a fear that the water services will actually start to add additional and separate costs to them. Is there going to be separate bills coming through for water under the new model?
Eventually, at this stage, so in terms of the short term, getting to July 2026, our priority is to make sure that we look after customers, look after staff, and do the basics well. In terms of billing, we thought it was too high risk for Waikato Waters to set up its own billing system with very little benefit to customers. And so we are leaving billing with councils in the short term. So so ratepayers will see what their line item is for Waikato Waters, but they will receive their bill from the local council.
And then finally, is water metering liable to become something prevalent throughout the region?
I would say yes. Each of our councils have budgeted for water meters already in their long-term plans. And so we're committed to delivering on those long-term plan commitments. I would probably just question whether or not there's sufficient budget in those long-term plans for the water meters. I also think there's an opportunity to think differently around, do we need to own the water meters? We think about the way that we look at most technology. It's a licensing approach. It's a software for service approach. And the current approach of owning water meters that quickly become redundant and out of date. I think we've got to change our thinking and make sure that if we're investing in water meters, they're keeping up with technology over time.
You want to?
Yeah, thanks. Look, I just want to acknowledge, Vaughan, the leadership that you've shown in the space, and it's not easy trying to get councils to come together and work, and I think that you had a vision that you've been able to engage them on. I just wonder if you might want to comment on well, first of all, the Minister of Local Government has actually quite often said the Waikato is a success, and what we've got, this is the biggest entity, I think, in the country of councils coming together for water services. But maybe you just want to comment on the other CCO, the Hamilton City Waikato District one, and how that kind of works, and especially in a catchment approach.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so EOY being the Hamilton Waikato District CCO, I think there is a vision, I suppose, for one CCO one day for the Waikato region, but our priority is looking after our immediate shareholders and making sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves. Notwithstanding that, some initial discussions with EOY have identified some opportunities for collaboration. Water meters would probably be one of those. Getting some joint procurement, economies of scale around procurement. Another one would be systems, IT systems and so on. A third one, which I think is probably relevant to Waikato Regional Council, would be perhaps the sub-regional wastewater treatment plant proposed between Waipa and Hamilton. It seems to me that we don't build these plants very often, and it might be a great sitter for looking at one of the Crown mechanisms to set up to design, construct, build and operate that wastewater treatment plant, which would probably mean that it could be built quicker and more efficiently than if it was still left to the water entities trying to work out who's doing what. In terms of catchment-based approaches, Chris, I think there's opportunities there as well to look at, even though we're two different entities, can we collaborate in the consenting space as well and come up with a combined consenting strategy?
Just finally, do you want to talk about TCDC?
TCDC, so TCDC, when TCDC was looking at whether it went with, had multiple options on the table, we were very keen and encouraging of TCDC to join with Waikato Waters. They've decided obviously to look elsewhere, and we respect that, but notwithstanding, I'm sure the shareholders would be open to any approaches by TCDC. They would just need to look at, like we've got a pathway for any shareholder that wants to join. They would put a proposal to the board would undertake due diligence and then put the results of that due diligence to the shareholders. So there's quite a clear process around looking at any new shareholders.
There's a question from me, Vaughn. Hey, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for how you have remained engaged with this council and helping our councillors continue to understand how this process has evolved. So I appreciate that. I suppose I reflect on what started these conversations nationwide, right? It's whether it was the previous government or this government, it's that desire to address the issue of affordability of Three Waters infrastructure and meeting the needs of growing populations or diminishing populations and addressing that affordability of rates. So you've said that this is the largest combination in the country, which of 7 councils. So if we consider, I assume there's about 66 total TAs that have to provide this type of infrastructure, and so 59 others outside of these 7. How many entities are we now looking at across the country?
Mm,
Considering that we wanted to do this because we wanted efficiencies, we wanted access to workforce, we wanted cost savings, things like that. Just
So it
how
says
many are we in?
as a rule of thumb, the more you go south, the less entities or aggregation of entities that you get, as a rule of thumb. So most of the aggregations happening in the North Island, if you like.
I thought I'd heard something like 42 entities or
Yeah.
something.
That sounds about right. I read an article a couple of weeks ago along those lines. I
So
think that,
instead of 66 councils,
I think from a
42 entities.
I think the government perhaps isn't that impressed with the number of standalone councils, is my reading of the situation. And to support what Chris said, the Waikato, it's got probably one of the highest number of TAs, but only ending up with largely two entities. I think they're pretty pleased with the leadership from the Waikato.
Very good. Nice. Good to hear that recognized. Councillor Smith.
With the 7 councils, what's the population base in those 7? Because several of them are pretty small.
Yeah. So the population, and this isn't connected population, but it's just total population, I think was about 250,000. Sorry, 205,000. In terms of number of customers, it's about 65,000 customers.
Thank you.
And in terms of water meters, my recollection is about a third of those customers have water meters. So we've got quite a challenge in the water meter space.
Yeah, I come from Waikato district where we had done all the water meters, and the savings from leaks and whatever was enormous. And by sorting out that issue, you don't then have to build new plant for some time. So I'm watching from the sideline as to see how Hamilton moves forward because they've resisted those meters so long. Yeah, congratulations on where you've got to, and be intriguing where you end up. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
I was just to comment, we get something strategy and policy the other day to say that with the water services bill, regional councils don't get to have a say generally about what the rules are, except for here. It's the only area where the treaty settlement is being applied to possibly increase the standards. Do you have any comment?
Only that I suppose the settlements we've known about for some time and have been trying to give effect to those for some time. I think that the real opportunity is thinking about a whole of catchment approach to investment. And I don't just mean point source, I mean land use as well. I think we can get can be smarter and help our dollar go further just by thinking about investing collectively and as opposed to our, I suppose, district by district, plant by plant approach that we've been. Yeah, so I don't feel challenged by our increased expectations around improving water quality, because I think there are big opportunities to invest smarter and make some good savings.
And we just had a delegation earlier asking whether we would consider water utility takes that are already consented should be able to be rolled over on a non-notified basis if they comply and don't have any issues. Is that something you'd ever comment on?
From a water company point of view, that
Yeah.
sounds attractive. I think though, yeah, I think it's got to look at every situation on its merits.
Well, we'll put you in touch with Trevor Simpson from Waikato. So,
That name rings a bell.
yeah.
All right, if there's no other questions for Mr. Payne, can I get a mover to accept the report? I've got Councillor Hodge and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Vaughn. Thank you for your work. All right, councillors, we'll now go to item 7.2. This is our health and safety report for July 2025. This is on page 167 of your agendas. Mr. Brown.
Good morning, councillors. I'll take you through the report to the points of interest and take any questions that you might have. You'll see there that we've had a forestry worker pretty seriously injured with the amputation of 4 fingers, which actually ended his career. I think we discussed at the last council meeting just the compensation, and you'll see that he received $60,000 there, which doesn't seem like a lot when you've lost your career. But I think it was the end of his 45-year career, and he was 65, so due for retirement. And he would have also received an ACC payment for that. If he had have been decided to continue working, he would have obviously been covered further with ACC. You'll see in point 16 there, just around our SOPs. It's a really important thing for us, and the health and safety team work closely with the managers to ensure that we've got SOPs in place, that we keep our workers safe in whatever they're doing. And that's really the area that this organisation fell down on. So it's good that we're across that. Progressing on, you'll see that we've mentioned the My Everyday Wellbeing again. We've talked about that a few times. That continues to be a real valuable thing for us and the staff. My Everyday Wellbeing continues to evolve and progress and basically offer a more comprehensive offering. And Marie has, socialised that with other organisations, and thankfully we've managed to get a couple of other councils on board with that. That's had a significant positive impact for us. Our annual fee for that is $14,000, and that's been reduced by half to $7,000 by bringing those other organisations on board. And it's just worth noting, talking about that constant innovation and improvement. My Everyday Wellbeing are now, they now have a new mood meter offering, which allows staff to go in and sort of tailor how they're feeling at the time, and that will give different outputs for recommendations on things that they could do. So the wellbeing team have picked that up and are looking at it for us, and we'll continue to socialise that with staff. As we move through into the events, you'll see that there are 3 personal safety events there. That was all for the one incident, and that happened in Thames with the maritime team. They turned up on site, and unfortunately, a gentleman was very agitated to see them and got off his boat with a metal bar and proceeded towards them in an aggressive manner. Now, the maritime team are fantastic and did a great job in responding to that and de-escalating that situation, and worked as a team to calm the man down and able to have some reasonable dialogue with him. He did attempt to assault them kind of through that, and again, they managed to de-escalate that. So it's a real credit to them. And the training that they have received has gone well, along with the previous experience that they bring to the role. It's also worth noting that Hayden's done a fantastic job with the investigation for that, and we'll have had really good engagement with the police around that as well. So it's good good that that's been progressing well. The other piece that I wanted to pick up, you'll see there that we have the criminal antisocial behaviour. We've got one instance of that, and I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Downer, we had talked about that, and because we've had a couple of police interactions that misinterpreted that, but that was actually for something separate, which was a member of staff observed family violence assault and actually stopped in their work and contacted the police to be able to assist with that. That's just to clarify that. As we progress through, I've talked a little bit about, you know, the good response Maritime had with that instance, but we are seeing improved quality in our investigations, and the health and safety team are working with managers and staff to ensure that we kind of have more quality outputs and the corrective actions are good and that we kind of share those across the organisation. So that's going very well. Sure, that was the key points that I wanted to raise with you today. Thank you.
Nice. Are there any questions? We've got a mover in Councillor Downard and a second in Councillor Smith. Just before I put that, just want to comment on that cost reduction through shared service provision.
Yes.
I suppose, and that my everyday well-being. I think that's a real testament to how when we work collectively as councils, whether that is here within the region, whether that is across regional sector, whether that's across the country and engagement with other councils, it shows how we can achieve cost savings for our ratepayers while continuing to meet the obligations that we have, not just legally, but morally to our staff and those who interact with us. So I think it's fantastic feedback to see, because that provides evidence to our ratepayers that we continue to look for opportunities. So
Agree.
well done. All right, I've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed?
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. All right, councillors, I'm just going to take a 5-minute break before we go on to the next item. All right, so meeting adjourned at 10:46. We'll come back and 10:55. We'll come back 10:55.